Thanks for stopping by today. Rep for Disability here to give you some tips on how you can get the state to reimburse you for your office equipment. Specifically, how can you get the state to pay for you a new printer? So you have chosen the CDS option. You want to self-direct your child, teenager, young adult, or mature adult services, and you need a printer to make those copies. You're tired of going to Office Depot or Staples. Having your own having your own printer at home is a much easier and convenient option, but of course they can also be costly. Great news, CDS employers, you can get your printer paid for through your child's budget, young adult, teenager, mature adult, if you have chosen the consumer directed option. And that's what we're going to delve into a little bit deeper. You can access this information through the text, as you can see there at the top. Text reg.sos.state.tx.us, or you can consult your CDS handbook manual for this information as well. Let's look at the first sentence. A parentheses, an employer or DR, meaning designated representative, may budget employer support services and startup expenses through the services that are delivered by one or more employees in the CDS option. Employment-related expenses as described in subsection D of this section, and then employer-related expenses as described in subsection E of this section. That's what this video is going to focus on how you can be reimbursed for your employee and your employer-related expenses. But before we get into that, I want to bring your attention to a couple of things first. Let's see. Right here, bullet number 2, budget must not budget more than $600 annually or more than $50 per month if less than 12 months remain in the service plan. So just a real easy way to interpret that. Each year, if you haven't already chosen the CDS option, and for those that are existing CDS employers, the maximum the state will allow your budget or your individual budget is $600 per year. $600, okay? I'm really not going to get into the $50 per month if it's less than 12 months, because that can get a little bit confusing. I want to make sure that this is extremely easy to understand and follow along. So let's now look at the next point that I want to bring to your attention, and that is right here. May budget any remaining amount. Bullet number 4. Let me just zoom that in. May budget any remaining amount in the effective program service for employee compensation. It's a Monday, forgive me, y'all. I'm a little bit tongue-tied. So what that means, for example, you've already got your budget approved for that year. You've only used $400 of the $600 that the state allows you as a CDS employer. That remaining $200 can be used, as you can see, for employee compensation, wages, and benefits. Okay, so just know that if you do not use the entire money allowed for your employee-related expenses, you can move that money over or use that money for a different area like your employee compensation. So that's very important to understand. Now, we can get into some of the expenses here. So let me go and look. Hold on for a second. I always got to go and look for it. Okay, I see E, but where's D? Okay, right here. Right here, right here. An employer or DR may budget allowable, necessary, and reasonable employment-related service, goods, or items, including recruiting expenses. For example, and a lot of people go online to look and apply for jobs. I believe Indeed has a fee to use that service. A different way to say that, more clear, if you want to recruit through Indeed, just go ahead, pay for it, and then you can be reimbursed for that Indeed fee. So that's an example of a recruiting expense. I personally use the Texas Workforce Commission because it's free. Free 99, free 99. Anytime I can get that free 99, I'm definitely going to use that resource first before I will pay. So recruiting expenses is one of those things, that items or services that you can be reimbursed for. Providing support consultation, we're just gonna skip past that. Purchase employee job specific training. If your child or a teen or something like that is in a wheelchair or need transfer assistance, you can go ahead and pay for a service for your personal attendant to be able to receive that training. Okay, because we definitely don't want our personal attendants to injure themselves in the process of transferring. Another thing is cardiopulmonary resuscitation training, which is CPR. And matter of fact, CPR is a required training. I know specifically for the Class Medicaid waiver program, you must have CPR training. That's one of the requirements, okay? Another thing is the first aid training. That's not necessarily a requirement, but if that's something that you want your employee or personal attendant to have, that is something that's $600 you can use towards paying for that first aid training. Number 6 bullet, supplies required for an employee or provider of the service to perform a task, if not available through the individual's program. I'm not going to really worry about that because that can get a little bit, matter of fact, I'm going to address that in a separate video because the state has something called allowable expenses, goods and services. So again, I'll address that in a separate video, but just to keep it simple and you can follow through me very clearly, real quickly, recruiting expenses, like if you want to post a job through Indeed, your CPR training, your first aid training, things of that nature, you can be reimbursed through that $600. So let's go to the bullet E. And I hope I'm not going too fast. So let's go to the bullet E here. An employer or DR may budget employer-related services. Let me zoom in, guys. I want you to see this for yourself because I'd rather to teach you how to fish versus giving you fish. And if you run into a case manager or DSA that say you can't do that, you can simply refer to this particular policy and show them that you absolutely can. An employer or DR may budget employer-related services, goods, or items required to meet employer responsibilities, including basic office equipment, which may include a basic fax machine for the purpose of submitting documents to the FMSA. Basic fax machine, a lot of people really not using fax machines. This is kind of outdated, but people are still using printers. And I can honestly tell you, you're going to need to make copies, especially when it comes to hiring new employees. You got to make a copy of their driver's license. You have to make a copy of the Social Security card, things of that nature. Not all FMSAs are using online systems to submit these required documents when you hiring a new personal care attendant. So you might have to go to HHSC and then download those forms and print it out. So to avoid going to your local Staples or your local Office Depot to make copies, you can just simply go ahead and purchase a printer. And I'm going to show you, the one that I purchased today, okay? So basic office equipment, mailing cost. A lot of times people are using, again, you can go to the internet, Google Fax Zero, and fax documents via the internet. So a lot of people are not just buying fax machines per se. They're more or less buying all in one that makes copies, that prints, scans, and some of the other features that these printers have, these all-in-one printers have. Another thing is file folders and envelopes. Of course, as an employer, you're going to need folders to separate, especially if you're still using paper. If you're using paper to fill out these forms, to have your applicants fill out application forms, and then all the various state forms for a new applicant, that's going to help you better manage, especially if you have more than one employee. It's going to help you better manage, and then it's also going to help you to organize all your employees instead of just having everybody's information all in one place or in one pile. It can start becoming annoying and then frustrating depending on the number of employees that you have. Number 5, service goods and items specifically approved by the individual's program as an employer service or included as allowable expenditures in appendix. Forgive me, y'all. I'm pretty deficient when it comes to the Roman numerals, but you know what that is. Again, I'm going to address allowable expenses in a separate video. But just for this video's sake right here, I'm only going over basic information in terms of being reimbursed for employer and employee expenses. So, now that you have purchased your basic equipment, and for the purpose of this video, I'm going to use the example that I've created for my son. So I ended up buying a printer today to replace ink cartridges. For the previous one I had is like almost $100. So I just went on and bought another printer. One, it's over 2 years old. So of course the technology has advanced since I bought that computer, that printer 2 years ago. And then also, it was on sale. So it just made sense for me to go ahead and buy another printer. So, like I said, you've bought your printer. To prove that you've bought your printer, typically the FMSAs will request a receipt. Just to make it easier on yourself and makes it easier for me, if I know with Office Depot, they have an option where you can email the receipt to yourself. That way you have an electronic copy of the email. But if you're one of those individuals who's tangible, who is hands-on, you need to have that piece of paper in your hand. For sure, you're going to need this printer, or you're going to need a printer at home so you can scan the receipts and then be able to download or transfer that information to your home computer. But for me, it's just a lot easier to go ahead and have the receipt emailed to me. Hold on, son. My son is getting ready to put the water. Oh. It's just easier to have the receipt email. I have an electronic copy. If I do somehow misplace or lose the paper receipt, I have that electronic copy as a backup. So here I put together this invoice. As you can see there's employee support services. This is for my son. And I have the description right there. Of course, you don't have to do this. That I customized for my son, as you can see. We have the printer there, description. We have the date. We have the budget year. Again, remember that these budgets is only for a year. So that's just kind of helped me keep things organized for myself, but also for the FMSA. And if the state was to audit the paperwork, whether it's through the FMSA or through myself as a CDS employer, all of the information is basically there. You can see the yearly budget is already in there. See the total there. And then, as you can see right here, I put a nice little nifty note. Employer, be sure to attach receipts to this invoice to avoid delays for reimbursement. You can have your reimbursement delayed if you don't have all of the stuff that the FMSAs require. They will not give you funds up front for you to go and purchase employee related goods and services. That's something I want to make clear. You must purchase first and then submit your receipt for reimbursement to your FMSA. I did, as you can see at the bottom, I put the name of the FMSA. I don't think I'm violating any kind of rules there because the FMSA is on a public list. FMSAs, DSAs, they are on a public list with the state of Texas. And then I always like to add a little bit of the policy, just in case. You just never know. And sometimes there is that window where people got to be trained. They may not be familiar with certain policies as a CDS employer. So a CDS employer may budget allowable, necessary, and reasonable employee-related and employer-related services, goods, items, and supplies required to meet responsibilities. Okay, I have created a template. It's not customized or personalized as the one that I created for my son, but this is an example of invoice template that you can submit. And then here, there is a blank one. So I've given you an example to, fill it out. Depending on how many items that you have, you will do it there. And then, of course, this is a blank template that you can use to submit your expenses for employee-related expenses, as you can see. You can download this through PDF form. I'm going to provide a link, in the description box, but you can also access this through Pinterest, Rep for Disability. If you need more training and skills beyond what your FMSA can provide, Rep for Disability is now Texas approved to help you with all your CDS employer needs.